The shadows in Isaac's tent are heavy and quiet as a younger son steps across the threshold carrying a plate of stolen meat. He wears his older brother's clothes. He has wrapped the raw, hairy skin of a slaughtered goat around his hands and the smooth of his neck. This is a desperate, theatrical disguise designed to fool a dying patriarch whose eyes have failed him. Read that again. The heir of Abraham, the man who heard the voice of the Almighty, is supposedly tricked by a dead goat and a borrowed tunic. Picture it. The air is thick with the smell of savory food. Jacob draws near to the bed, trembling under the weight of an incredible lie. We are taught this story as a simple deception, a family drama of trickery. We are told Isaac was blind, weak, and easily manipulated by his wife and second-born son. But the biblical text does not build its covenants on cheap tricks. Something ancient woke the spirit of prophecy in Isaac, and it was not a senile man being fooled by a disguise. Listen to the exact wording of the King James Version in Genesis chapter 27, verse 15. And Rebekah took goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her younger son. Stop right there. Look closely at the detail in that verse. We read right past it, assuming Rebekah grabbed a random, unwashed hunting jacket from a tent peg. But there is a reason the text pauses to tell you exactly where these clothes were kept. They were not with Esau in the field. They were with Rebekah in the house, kept close, guarded by the mother who had been told by God that the older would serve the younger. There is an ancient Jewish writing, the Book of Jasher, a text explicitly named in the canonical books of Joshua and 2 Samuel. Jasher records a very different history for this specific set of clothes, a history steeped in blood. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But their telling forces us to look at the Hebrew text of Genesis with entirely new eyes. These were not ordinary garments, woven from Canaanite wool or Egyptian flax. They were relics of an older world. See the scene again, not as a trick, but as a ritual. Jacob is not just putting on a disguise to hide from his father in the dark. He is putting on an inheritance. The Hebrew phrase behind goodly raiment is bigdi hachamudot, the garments of desire, the coveted garments, same root word used elsewhere for the precious, holy vessels of the temple. Something about these specific clothes was immensely valuable, fiercely protected, and violently acquired. They carried a physical weight that went far beyond the dirt and sweat of a hunting field. Rebekah knew exactly what she held in the house. She knew what Jacob had to wear to stand before the patriarch of the covenant. A freshly killed goatskin alone would never secure the supreme blessing of Abraham. Isaac needed to feel the weight of the rightful heir. He needed to touch the fabric of dominion. But to understand why a blind man would grant the birthright over a piece of clothing, we have to follow the blood trail left behind. The coveted garments hold a violent secret, one that predates Esau's birth by generations. Whose life was taken in the open field to bring those clothes into Isaac's camp? Rebekah lifts the heavy fabric from the chest in the innermost part of her tent. The canonical narrative of Genesis 27 turns on this exact moment, long before Jacob ever steps into his father's presence. Esau is out in the open fields, hunting for venison, entirely unaware that the most valuable thing he owns has just been placed into his brother's trembling hands. Look at the logistical paradox in Genesis 27-15. Rebekah takes the goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house. Stop right there. By this point in the biblical timeline, Esau is no longer a boy. Genesis 26 explicitly tells us that Esau is 40 years old and married to 2 Hittite women. He is a master of the hunt, a man who has built his own household, pitched his own tents, and established his own physical footprint in the camp of Isaac. Yet his most vital possession is not in his own tent. It is not guarded by his wives. It is locked away in the dwelling of his mother. Sit with that. A 40-year-old, battle-hardened hunter does not leave his favorite hunting jacket in his mother's care. These are not work clothes. These are not garments meant for the mud and the blood of the open plain. Watch what the text does. The English translation goodly raiment softens a word that carries immense, dangerous weight in the Hebrew. The word is chamadoth. It stems from the root chamad, which means to covet, to crave, or to desire fiercely. It is the exact same root word used in the Garden of Eden, when the forbidden tree was described as to be desired to make one wise. It is the same root thundering from the fire of Sinai in the 10th commandment, "Thou shalt not covet." These are the coveted garments, the raiment of intense desire. Within ancient Jewish historical tradition, these garments were understood to be the priestly garments of the firstborn. Before the tribe of Levi was ever separated to serve in the tabernacle, the rite of priesthood, the rite of offering sacrifice, and the mantle of spiritual authority belonged exclusively to the eldest son of the family. The garments were the physical proof of that dominion. Whoever wore the coveted garments held the right to stand before God on behalf of the bloodline. Picture it. Rebekah is not just dressing Jacob in a tactical disguise. She is physically stripping the priesthood from the line of Esau and wrapping it around the shoulders of the second-born. This is one reading, not the final word, but it explains why the mother of the covenant is guarding them. She knows the prophecy spoken over her womb by the Lord. She knows the older will serve the younger. And she knows that Isaac cannot bless the son of the covenant without the physical fabric of the covenant present in the room. But a dark problem remains, hovering just outside the edge of Isaac's camp. Esau is a man of the sword, a man who despises his birthright, a man who married outside the faith of Abraham. How did the sacred, coveted garments of the patriarchs become the prize of a violent hunter? The canonical text of Genesis hints at his nature, but an older record kept by the scribes of Israel pulls back the veil on a battlefield assassination. A mother holds the coveted garments of the firstborn in the dark. But the ancient world tells us these clothes did not start with Abraham. Whose corpse did Esau leave in the dirt to claim them? The dust of the open field settles over a dead king. A young man stands above him, blood on his hands, stripping a heavy, ancient tunic from the fallen ruler before the royal guard can arrive. Picture it. This is not the quiet pastoral life of shepherds. This is a battlefield assassination in the wilderness. Keep your eyes anchored on the exact phrasing of Genesis 27-15. And Rebekah took goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her younger son. We know these are the chamadoth, the garments of fierce desire. But the canonical text does not pause to tell us how a rugged, profane man of the wilderness came to own an artifact of such staggering value. For that, we turn to the preservation of history kept by the ancient scribes. I offer it as that, one tradition's record. Test it the way the Bereans tested everything. Jasher records a startling event in the life of Esau, one that perfectly explains the blood soaked into the fabric of his legacy. According to this ancient record, the coveted garments were not woven by Esau's wives. They were actively being worn by the most powerful tyrant on the earth, Nimrod, the king of Shinar, the architect of the Tower of Babel. Read that again. The goodly raiment belonged to the king of Babylon. The canonical text of Genesis 10 calls Nimrod a mighty hunter before the Lord. But ancient Jewish scholars understood that Nimrod's might did not come from his physical strength, nor his skill with a bow. His dominion over the beasts of the field came entirely from what he wore. When he put the garments on, the animals of the earth submitted to him. The masses of humanity followed him. He wore the physical fabric of authority. Watch what the text does. Jasher tells us that Esau, wandering in the wilderness, saw Nimrod separated from his men. And when Esau saw the garments, the ancient root word flared up, chamad. He coveted them. With a fierce and violent desire, Esau ambushed the aging king, struck him down in the dirt, and stripped the heavy raiment from his bleeding body. He fled back to the tents of his father, terrified that Nimrod's guard would track him down, and surrendered the clothes to the deepest chests of his mother's tent. 2 hunters, 1 prize, same bloody ambition. Return to the dark of Isaac's tent in Genesis 27-15. When Rebekah places the goodly raiment upon Jacob, she is not just masking his scent, she is arming him. Jacob is wrapping himself in the stolen mantle of Earth's first post-flood empire. He is walking up to his father's bed wearing the undisputed symbol of earthly dominion. Stop right there. The deception is profound, but the object itself holds a much darker gravity. The garments grant authority over the beasts. They grant power in the earth. But human hands cannot weave a garment that bends the laws of nature. A human loom in the plains of Shinar cannot manufacture a fabric that commands the submission of living creatures. If Nimrod's power came from these garments, we must ask the impossible question: where did Nimrod get them? A stolen king's mantle now sits on the shoulders of a second-born son. The blood of Babel is woven into the threads, but the origin of this fabric predates the flood. Who was the original tailor of the coveted garments? Blood touches the soil of the earth for the very first time, not on a dusty battlefield in Shinar, but in the shadow of the trees of Eden. The Lord God is taking the life of an innocent creature to cover the nakedness of the first man and woman. The rebellion has just happened. The exile is imminent. But before the flaming sword is placed at the east of the garden, a physical covering must be made. Picture it. This is the first sacrifice, the first shedding of blood for human failure. Genesis chapter 3, verse 21 inches. The King James reads, "Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins, and clothed them." Stop right there. We read this verse as a simple moment of divine tailoring. We assume God is just providing practical survival gear, before throwing mankind out into a harsh, thorn-infested world. But nothing in the canonical text of Genesis is purely practical. This is the beginning of a lineage. These coats of skins were the physical replacement for the spiritual glory Adam lost. They were the first inheritance of the earth, the first mantle of authority. There is an older Jewish tradition, faithfully recorded in the Book of Jasher, that tracks the exact movement of these garments through the centuries. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact, but their record fills the silence of the canonical text with chilling clarity. Jasher records that these specific coats of skins were passed from Adam to Enoch. Enoch handed them to Methuselah. Methuselah passed them to Noah, who carried them safely into the ark. Same skins, same weight, same origin. But after the flood waters receded, the sacred chain was broken. Noah did not bestow the garments upon his righteous son Shem. According to the ancient scribes, Ham stole the garments from his father's tent in secret. Ham hid them, eventually passing them to his firstborn, Cush. And Cush handed them down to his son, Nimrod. Sit with that. Watch what the text does. Suddenly, the terrifying empire of Babel makes complete sense. Nimrod was not recognized as a mighty hunter before the Lord simply because he was good with a bow. He conquered the post-flood world because he was wearing the original coats of Eden. The ancient sages teach that when Nimrod put on those skins, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air would instinctively bow down to him. They recognized the fabric of their first master. They were submitting to the physical remnant of Adam's lost dominion. Two realms, one earthly ruler, one stolen coat. When Esau murders Nimrod in the field and violently takes the coveted garments, he is not just looting a Babylonian king. He is reclaiming the lost inheritance of the garden. He is taking back the coats of skins that Ham stole after the flood. And when Rebekah opens her chest in Genesis 27 to dress Jacob, she is wrapping her second-born son in the absolute genesis of human authority. Jacob is walking up to Isaac's bed wearing the skins of the fall. He is carrying the weight of Adam into the dark of his father's tent. The mantle of the first creation is standing right beside Isaac's bed, completely invisible to his failed eyes. But a blind patriarch does not rely on his vision to confirm the weight of the covenant. What physical sense does Isaac use to finally pull his son close in the dark? The physical space between father and son vanishes in the shadows of the tent. Isaac is blind, but his remaining senses are sharp, searching the dark for the truth of the man standing by his bed. He has already heard a voice that sounds suspiciously like Jacob. He has already felt the rough, dead skin of a slaughtered goat on the hands of the son who brought the meat. The tactile disguise is holding. The lie is working, but touch is not the sense that finally breaks the patriarch open. Listen to the exact sequence of the King James text in Genesis chapter 27, verses 26 and 27. And his father Isaac said unto him, Come near now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near, and kissed him. And he smelled the smell of his raiment, and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field which the Lord hath blessed. Stop right there. See the scene. Isaac pulls his son down by the shoulders. His face presses directly into the heavy fabric of the coveted garments. He breathes in deeply, and the smell of the raiment immediately triggers the spoken prophecy of the covenant. But read the text strictly for its paradox. Think about the physical reality of Esau's life. He is a man of the sword, a hunter who wanders the brutal wilderness. The clothes, he wears the garments of fierce desire. The skins ripped from the body of Nimrod have passed through murder, theft, and the mud of a fallen world. If you take the text purely at the natural level, Esau's hunting jacket should reek of dried blood, animal fat, campfires, and human sweat. Sit with that. A violent, blood-soaked hunter comes out of the wilderness. But when Isaac breathes in the scent of his clothes, he does not smell death. He does not smell copper or dust. He smells a field which the Lord hath blessed. This is not a throwaway poetic phrase. The earth was cursed in Genesis 3. The ground was condemned to bring forth thorns and thistles. The open fields of Canaan are harsh, unforgiving places of drought and famine. Isaac himself has had to fight Philistines over wells just to keep his herds from dying of thirst. There is no ordinary, natural field in Isaac's world that radiates an inherent, overwhelming aroma of divine blessing. Watch what the text does. The scent rising off the collar of Jacob's borrowed tunic is not the smell of the outdoors. It is an anomaly. It is a supernatural fragrance clinging to ancient threads. The smell of the raiment is bypassing Isaac's failed eyes and speaking directly to his spirit. We are reading, not inventing. The canonical text insists that the blessing is unlocked by a smell, not a touch, not a taste, a sudden, overpowering scent. The skins of the fall, passed from Adam down through the bloodline, have retained something physically impossible. I hold this as one reading, not the final word. But if these garments are the original coats of skin from the first creation, then the scent trapped in their fibers cannot be from the cursed earth outside Isaac's tent. A blind man breathes in the scent of an ancient fabric, But what exact fragrance does he recognize that forces the supreme blessing of Abraham out of his mouth? The heavy linen of Isaac's bedchamber fades away the moment he draws in his breath. The smell of the raw goat skin wrapped around Jacob's hands vanishes completely. Isaac is blind. His body is failing, but his spirit is suddenly pulled backward in time, violently transported out of the famine-struck tents of Canaan. He is breathing in a scent that has not belonged to the earth since the days before the flood. Picture it. The canonical text of Genesis 27-27 says he pulled his son close, smelled the smell of his raiment, and immediately declared it as the smell of a field which the Lord hath blessed. Stop right there. The King James text anchors the mystery, but the ancient scribes refused to let that verse remain an abstract metaphor. They asked the exact same question we are asking tonight. What field? There is an ancient Aramaic translation and commentary of the Torah known as the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan. It was preserved to explain the deep, unbroken oral traditions hiding beneath the Hebrew text. And when the Targum reaches this exact breath in Genesis 27, it translates Isaac's words not as a pastoral observation, but as a staggering revelation. I hold this as one tradition's record, not the final word. But the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan says Isaac smelled the garments and cried out, "Behold, the fragrance of my son is as the fragrance of the incense of spices, which is to be offered in the Garden of Eden." Read that again. The fragrance of the Garden of Eden. Watch what the text does. Isaac is not smelling the wild outdoors. He is not smelling the cedar trees of Lebanon or the rain on the dirt of Beersheba. He is smelling paradise. The original coats of skin were fashioned by the hands of God inside the borders of Eden. They were saturated with the atmosphere of the unfallen world. And when Jacob steps into the dark tent, wearing the coveted garments, the fabric still carries the unmistakable breath of the first creation. Same skins, same authority, same scent. Think about the immense weight of this moment. Isaac's father, Abraham, had walked the length and breadth of the promised land. He had built altars under the oak trees and pitched his tents in the desert. But Isaac is now encountering something older than Abraham's covenant. He is holding the physical remnant of Adam's world. The garments of fierce desire have survived the murder of Abel, the drowning of the earth, the theft of Ham, and the assassination of Nimrod in the open field. Through all that blood, the fragrance of Eden held fast to the threads. Sit with that. Rebekah knew. When she opened her chest and placed the goodly raiment on her younger son, she was not just hoping to fool an old man's fading senses. She was wrapping Jacob in the atmosphere of the garden. She knew that the patriarch of the covenant could not ignore the scent of paradise. But breathing in the fragrance of Eden does more than just calm Isaac's suspicions. It acts as a catalyst, because the moment Isaac recognizes the smell of that blessed field, the script of his life is entirely rewritten. A biological father preparing to hand over a massive earthly inheritance to his favorite hunter suddenly becomes a prophet speaking over the architecture of the cosmos. What ancient words does the scent of paradise force out of the patriarch's mouth? The breath enters Isaac's lungs, and the old man is suddenly no longer in the dark. He is back in the garden. The fragrance of the unfallen world floods his senses. It overrides the deception of the dead goat skin. It completely bypasses his physical blindness and commands his spirit to awaken. Picture it. Isaac opens his mouth to speak. But the words that pour out into the shadows of the tent are not a standard fatherly wish for a prosperous hunting season. They are a declaration of absolute, terrifying dominion. Listen to the exact words of the King James in Genesis chapter 27, verse 29. "Let peoples serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee." Stop right there. Read those words strictly for what they demand. This is not the language of a nomad dividing a few flocks of sheep in the hills of Canaan. Nations bow down to thee. This is the language of empire. This is the exact authority that the Book of Jasher tells us Nimrod wielded when he wore these very same skins. The animals submitted. The masses of humanity bowed down. Same garments, same dominion, same mandate. Watch what the text does. Isaac thinks he is speaking to his oldest son Esau, but his prophetic spirit is reacting entirely to the clothes. The fragrance of Eden has awakened the original mandate of Genesis 1, where God told Adam to have dominion over every living thing. Isaac is not just giving a family blessing. He is formally transferring the power of the chamudoth, the coveted garments of the firstborn. The physical fabric of the first creation now has the spoken breath of the patriarch to activate it. I hold this as one careful bridge between the ancient texts and our canonical Bible. I am not handing you doctrine. I am handing you the depth of what a prophetic awakening actually requires. The blessing of Abraham could not be released over a lie alone. It required the scent of paradise to force the ancient prophecy of dominion out of the patriarch's mouth. The words finish ringing in the quiet tent. The transfer is complete. Jacob, trembling violently, wearing the heavy, scent-soaked skins of the fall, backs away from his father's bed. He carries the reclaimed birthright of humanity on his shoulders. Genesis 27-30 says that Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, a matter of seconds. A heartbeat between the stolen blessing and the arrival of the hunter. Jacob slips out into the fading light, carrying the coats of Eden. But the absolute terror of this narrative is that the true older brother is already walking back into the camp. What happens when a violent man, a man who murdered a Babylonian king to claim those clothes, returns to find his cosmic inheritance has been stripped away? The dust of the wilderness clings to Esau as he walks back into the camp at Beersheba. He carries the freshly killed meat of the hunt, his hands stained with the blood of the field, completely unaware that the architecture of his future has already been dismantled. He prepares the savory food. He steps into the dark of his father's tent, expecting to receive the absolute dominion of the earth. Picture it. He stands by the bed and speaks the words he has waited 40 years to say. "Let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless me." Listen to the violent collision of reality in the King James text of Genesis chapter 27, verses 32 and 33. "And Isaac his father said unto him, Who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly." Stop right there. Read the physical reaction of the patriarch. Trembled very exceedingly. We read this as the shock of a confused old man realizing he has been tricked. But look at the Hebrew. The phrase is karada gadola ad meod. It means a terror, a violent shuddering, a panic that shakes the bones. Isaac is not just embarrassed by a family deception. He is suddenly realizing the cosmic magnitude of what just happened in that room. He remembers the heavy fabric. He remembers the undeniable fragrance of the Garden of Eden. And looking out of his blind eyes at the son standing before him now, Isaac realizes that the man who carried the atmosphere of paradise into his tent was not the firstborn. The mantle has moved. Watch what the text does. When Esau hears that Jacob has taken the blessing, Genesis 27-34 says, "He cried with a great and exceeding bitter cry." We are taught to view this as the tears of a son who missed out on a father's favor. But if we pull the ancient historical thread forward, Esau's agony is infinitely darker. I hold this as one reading, not the final word. But if Esau was the man who murdered the king of Babel to claim the coats of skins, then his bitter cry is the scream of a deposed king. He knows what his brother was wearing. He knows the chest in his mother's tent is empty. The chamudoth, the coveted garments of intense desire, are gone. The physical covering of the first creation, the fabric that forces the beasts of the field to submit, has been stripped from his lineage. Same blood, same theft, same ancient ambition. Esau is standing in the tent completely exposed. He has the physical strength of a hunter, but he no longer possesses the inheritance of Adam. Jacob did not just steal a few spoken words of prosperity. He walked out of the tent wearing the absolute genesis of human authority, leaving Esau with nothing but the sword. The dark tent of Isaac is now a room of ruins. Esau demands a secondary blessing, but Isaac's hands are empty. The cosmic mandate has already left the camp. Jacob is fleeing into the night, carrying the weight of the unfallen world on his shoulders. But what happens to the stolen coats of Eden when the fugitive finally stops running? The footprints of a terrified man disappear into the desert. Jacob is running toward Haran, carrying the birthright, the stolen blessing, and the immense weight of humanity's original mandate. He is leaving the promised land to save his life. But what happens to the coveted garments, the skins of Eden, that were supposed to be the undisputed proof of his authority? Picture it. We know Jacob successfully escaped Esau's sword, but look closely at the rest of Jacob's life. For 20 years, he serves Laban in a foreign land. He is cheated, manipulated, and forced into brutal labor. He watches his wages change 10 times. He sleeps with the frost in his hair and the sun burning his skin. Listen to the absolute paradox. If Jacob is wearing the shamudoth, the garments of fierce desire that force the earth to submit, why is his life defined by struggle and exile? Why doesn't Laban instantly bow to him? Why do the flocks not simply multiply at his command without the complicated breeding tactics at the watering troughs? Stop right there, because Jacob is not wearing them. Watch what the text does, or rather, what the text does not say. The coveted garments vanish from the canonical narrative the moment Jacob flees Isaac's camp. They are never mentioned again. They do not appear in Haran. They do not appear when Jacob wrestles the angel at Peniel. They are entirely absent when he finally reunites with Esau, decades later. There is an ancient tradition that fills this massive historical silence. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But the scribes suggest that the garments of Eden were far too dangerous to carry into exile. The mantle of the first creation could not be taken into the house of an idolater like Laban. Before Jacob crossed the border, he surrendered the skins. He hid them, buried them, or returned them to the deepest chests of his mother's tent. He left the land with the spoken promise of the covenant, but he left the physical fabric of authority behind. Sit with that. This explains the devastating tragedy of the next generation. Think about the life of Joseph, the favorite son of Jacob. What is the defining physical object of Joseph's story? A coat of many colors, given to him by his father. A special garment that immediately triggers the violent, murderous hatred of his older brothers. Same jealousy, same blood in the field, same theft of a coat. But Joseph's coat is a shadow. It is a human replica. Jacob could give his favorite son a beautiful piece of woven fabric, but he could not give him the original skins of the fall. The true inheritance, the fragrance of Eden, the garments of the firstborn, had been swallowed by the silence of the patriarchs. The physical artifacts of the garden were lost to history. The ancient lineage of the coveted garments ends in a hidden chest. But the prophecy they forced out of Isaac's mouth, in the dark of that tent, did not stay buried. The cosmic mandate was spoken, and once spoken, it cannot be unsaid. How does the shadow of this stolen coat reframe the entire story we thought we knew?